This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
The cost of medication has come to the fore this morning following the National Bureau of Statistics (NBS) publication of its Consumer Price Index report for the month of May 2024. The NBS says that inflation has climbed to 33.95%, with food and non-alcoholic beverages recording the highest numbers. Now, this actually raises the question of just how much Nigerians will have to pay for essential medicines with the continued fluctuation of prices in the market. Joining us this morning is a member of the Community Pharmacists Association, pharmacist Abiodun Adediran. Mr. Adediran, good morning and welcome to the conversation.
Good morning and thank you for having me on the station this morning.
Would like to start with getting a sense of what exactly is causing the prices of medicines to rise in the markets.
Okay, quite a number of factors are being responsible for the rising cost of medications in Nigeria. And more importantly, we are all aware of the unstable foreign exchange rate, the valuation of the naira. Then Nigeria depends more heavily on drug importation, and of course, most of the ingredients that were being used in manufacturing drugs in Nigeria were also imported. So these are some of those factors that contribute to the rising cost of medications in Nigeria. And lastly, the regulatory policy on drugs matter in Nigeria can also impact directly and indirectly on cost of medications in Nigeria. Thank you.
So we'll come to the regulatory policies you've mentioned in a moment. Just to give us more context to this conversation, I'm hoping, can you give us a sense of some of the essential drugs that are now more difficult to find in the market?
Most of the essential drugs that have become more difficult was solely the life-saving medications on some health matters, like drugs for asthmatic patients, most especially the inhaler and some other drug molecules. Then drugs for diabetics has become is one of those drugs as well that are getting out of reach of the Nigerian populace. Even cost of drugs, of antihypertensive drugs. So, just to mention a few. Thank you.
And has this raised any fears around counterfeit drugs in the market?
Definitely. When some drugs become very scarce in the market, so what follows is is increased use of counterfeit drugs, which is a very common practice in Nigeria. So that is just it. We can't really escape that. Once some drugs become very scarce, so manufacturing of counterfeit and adulterated drugs becomes the order of the day.
Mm. And, earlier you were talking about the reasons why we're facing these double-sided, it's essentially like a two-edged sword. One is scarcity, the other is that even if you find it, it's more expensive. And a lot of people point to the exit of big pharmaceutical companies such as GSK just a few months ago. You've just mentioned regulatory policies as well. Can you speak to us on what some of these policies are?
Part of the policy is of the fact that when a country depends heavily on drug importations without that country not increasing its capacity, the long-term effect, if nothing is done, is what Nigeria is experiencing now. We depend heavily on drug importation. And we also rely on importation of active pharmaceutical ingredients, bringing them. So what that tells you is that we can't really have control over the pricing of drugs that comes into our country.
Mm. The pharmaceutical sector is not the only sector that has seen big companies exit the country, right? But some of these other sectors have seen companies from countries such as India fill up certain spaces. Would that be, if we had Indian pharmaceutical companies filling up these spaces in Nigeria, would that be something of a temporary reprieve? Would you support that at all?
The truth and the fact remains that if the operating environment is not very conducive and nothing is being done over time, this will be the effect at the end of the day. Because the operating environment is one of those things that makes a company to continue to exist, to continue to remain operating in the country. With out of some countries, they give some kind of tax relief. They waive some kind of tariff on importing some of these pharmaceutical ingredients. So these are some of those things that will make a company to continue to remain. And it is not just a one thing event. It's something that has to be on continuous review from time to time in order to encourage every company that wants to continue to stay and remain in our country.
And sir, just as we wind down the conversation, I'm hoping you can speak to us on what the impact on people is. You've talked about drugs for things such as asthma and other respiratory conditions, diabetes, and these are people who would need these drugs more regularly. What does this mean for life expectancy in Nigeria?
Okay, the impact becomes very complicated. And what do I mean? When the cost of medications is out of reach for those people that really need it, what that means is that people will begin to keep their life-saving medications. For example, drugs that are supposed to be taken at that certain dosage and a certain dosage, and what the patients can afford is just very limited. So what that means is that there will be a gap. So there will be skipping of life-saving medications. And many of them, because they cannot afford the cost of those drugs, many turn to unapproved alternatives, either directly being known by them or being recommended by those that are close to them. And more importantly as well, when cost of drugs becomes out of reach for people, so there will be ultimate increased use of counterfeit drugs. So what that means is that if the price of that drug is a certain amount in a particular place, and that such patients hear that it is being cheaper at the other side, then you quickly go into that place, but the quality might not be assured.
Well, sir, thank you so much for speaking to us. And of course, it is our hope that things will improve within the sector. And we're hoping to speak with you once government intervenes or, if there are major changes. Thank you very much for your time. Our guest on the conversation is Abiodun Adediran, who's a pharmacist and a member of the Community Pharmacists Association, speaking to us on the current reality where drugs continue to be scarce and more expensive, out of reach for regular Nigerians who need these drugs for life-saving or rather life-threatening conditions.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.